Shalom everyone, and thank you for joining me in the study of Parashat Truma. One of the most fascinating objects that are on the top of the Aron, the ark, are the Cherubim, or the Cherubim. And today we will try to understand the symbolism and its meaning of the Cherubim, of the Cherubim. So the Torah states, "Ve'asita shnayim kruvim zahav." Hashem says to Moshe, you need to make two cherubim made out of gold. Miksha ta'aseh otam, you should make them from one piece of gold. Mishnei ktzot hakaporet, and they should be on the two sides. What is the meaning? Why do we need them? What's the symbolism of the cherubim? But before we go any further, we already know something about the cherubim, and that was in the time of creation. In Genesis, in Bereshit, chapter 3, verse 24, it says, "Vayegaresh et ha'adam." After Adam and Chava committed their sin, Hashem basically expelled them from Gan Eden, and in order to prevent them from, so to speak, from returning to Gan Eden, to the Garden of Eden, Vayashken mikedem legan Eden et hakruvim, Hashem placed the cherubim at the entrance of Gan Eden, ve'et lahat hacherev hamitapechet, and there is some kind of a sword that can go back and forth, lishmor et derech etz hachaim, to guard, to keep, to safeguard the path to the tree of life. So this is something very interesting. Hashem says to Moshe to make these cherubim and to put them on the top of the ark, but the first connotation and association with the cherubim is not exactly something holy or even something pure or nice. It's basically the cherubim are there, and whatever it was at the time of creation was basically like an image or some kind of an entity that guarded Gan Eden in order to prevent from Adam and Chava and humanity to go back to Gan Eden. And then in addition, you have this sword. So I would say, the flavor from the cherubim is not that great. So what exactly is going on here? Rashi says, Kruvim, dumut partzuf tinok lahem, which means baby face. Cherubim is some kind of a structure. It's not a big structure, some kind of a structure, and there was some kind of a structure with a baby face. Now, why do I need to know that? What is the lesson here? And how exactly Rashi knew that? So first let's start with how exactly Rashi knew that. One of the interpretations for the word kruv or cherub is the Aramaic translation is ravya or kravya, which means a young child. So therefore it makes sense that Rashi took it from there and says, okay, kruvim, the cherubim had like an image of a baby face. But let's pause here and ask ourselves, okay, baby face, no baby face, how is that going to affect my life or affect my understanding of the cherubim? So it seems to be that maybe baby face, or bichlal, in general, babies, you can't really get angry with babies. They look at you, you look at them, and immediately you melt. And the idea is maybe that we put this cherubim on the top of the ark, so Hashem always remembers that He loves us and He cares about us. That might be one reason. Second reason is that maybe to put on the ark these two structures with a baby face in order to show that the most important thing in our lives are our children, and we put them even on the top of the ark, because we know that by teaching Torah, by learning Torah, we elevate our kids, our children. It also might be that children, babies, little children, always have potential. And basically it's a sign for us to always remember that in a way we are like children, little children, and we always can achieve more. We can always stimulate ourselves in order to what? To maximize our potential. So it can be many different reasons and ideas in what Rashi is trying to claim. But Rashi is not the only one. Rashi continues in Perek Gimel Pasuk Kaf Daled, when the first time the Torah mentions the Cherubim, Rashi says, Et HaKeruvim, the cherubim, Malachei Chabala, which means angels of destruction. Now, obviously, we all understand there is a problem here. When Rashi explains the cherubim in Genesis, when God placed them at the entrance of the Garden of Eden, he says that they are what? Angels of destruction. When it comes to the cherubim in our Parasha, it says a structure with some kind of baby face. How can we reconcile this contradiction? So I would assume that one of the ways to reconcile this contradiction is by saying it depends where you put them and for what purpose. If you put them at the entrance of the Garden of Eden as a result of transgression, they are really angels of destruction, which means if you, Adam and Eve, or your descendants are about to return to Gan Eden, you need to know you need to deal with those angels of destruction. But if you put this cherubim on the top of the ark, they are baby face. They are little children that obviously you show love and care to. So it seems to be that the cherubim has some kind of a twofold mission. It can be used as angels of destruction, but it can also be used as a symbolism of care and love and some kind of a feeling of tenderness and warmth that comes with children. So that's what Rashi says. Rashi's grandson, the Rashbam, says the following: HaKeruvim הם עופות בעלי כנפיים גדולים. The cherubim are basically birds with long, long wings. Based on what it says in Yecheskel, in Ezekiel, at כרוב ממשך הסוחך, you, like Am Yisrael, you are like כרוב, like a cherub, who has very long, long wings. סוחך, like schach of Sukkot, like that covers, that basically brings everything under your wings. ונתתיך בהר הקודש אלוקים היית בתוך אבני אש התהלכת. Which means basically I will create that you will have these long wings that you can what? That you can wrap, that you can basically gather everything under your wings. So according to the Rashbam, we are not talking about baby face, we are talking about some kind of birds that has long wings, and they were on the top of the ark. Rav Kook, in his famous song, he says, Ben Adam, יש לך כנפי רוח, כנפי נשרים אדירים. Human being, a person, you need to know that you have wings. You need to know that you can fly. You need to know that you can elevate yourself from your earthly position. This song that Rav Kook wrote, this poem, has tremendous faith and hope and trust in human beings. In a way, Rav Kook takes Rashi's explanation and Rashbam explanations and put it together. Basically, Ben Adam, you can be like a bird, you can fly. You just need to believe in yourself. You need to believe in your potential, and this is why God will be very disappointed if we do not maximize your potential. יש לך כנפי רוח, you can fly, you can dream about great accomplishments that you can achieve. You just need to be placed on the ark, and don't be angels of destruction. So until now, we basically have few interpretations to the cherubim. It can be angels of destruction, it can be like little children with baby face, it can be birds with long wings, or it can be some kind of a combination and integration of all these interpretations. Rav Kook and says it's the symbolism of the cherubim is a symbolism for each one of us. Look at them. They look like human beings, but they have wings. This is exactly what I'm expecting of you to do. You need to understand, yes, you are a human being, you came from the Adama, you came from the earth, but you can fly. You can connect the earth and heaven. And that's on the top of the ark. That's in Lifnai ve'Lifnim. This is in the holy of the holiest of the tabernacle and the Beit HaMikdash and the temple. You need to know that you can get there and be like them. So that's what we have until now. The Baal HaTurim, Rabbi Yaakov Baal HaTurim, who was around the 14th, getting into the 15th century in Spain, says, the pasuk, the verse described the cherubim, ufneem ish el achiv, which means they faced each other. Says the Baal HaTurim, kmo shnei chaverim, like two friends, shenos'im venotnim bedivrei Torah, like two friends who talk about Torah and they learn Torah together, which means we are two friends, we look at each other and we're talking about Torah. That's why the cherubim are on the top of the ark. But it's more than that. When you learn Torah, you exchange ideas. You listen to the other person. You challenge him or her. And basically, the symbolism of the cherubim is what? Is a symbolism of conversations. It's try to look at someone else's face and to listen to what he or she has to say. This is not something that I'm here, you are here, and we do not communicate. You are talking about a flow of knowledge, information, discussion, conversations, appreciation between two people who seek to find the truth. So that's the symbolism according to the Baal HaTurim. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch has somewhat of a totally different take on this entire idea of the cherubim, and he says the following. That's Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch on Genesis, on Bereshit, when God placed the cherubim basically as guards to the entrance of the Garden of Eden. So he says the following. קרובים שומרים את עץ החיים שבמקדש, שהוא גן עדן בזעיר אנפין, כדרך שהם שומרים כאן על דרך עץ החיים. So I need to give an introduction. This is not the original idea of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, but many commentators talks about the similarities between how the Beit HaMikdash was created and how the tabernacle was built, and the similarities to the creation of this universe. There are many psukim, many verses that reminds us of creation. And therefore, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch suggests that Beit HaMikdash, that the temple or the tabernacle, it's like the Garden of Eden. And in a way, the cherubim function in the same way. What does that mean? It means that the same way that the cherubim were guarding the entrance of the Garden of Eden and the path to the tree of life, it's the same way that the cherubim are on the top of the ark in the Holy of the Holiest of the tabernacle / the temple, and they also guard the tree of life that it's in the Holy of the Holiest. What does that mean? לבל תאבד מן האדם, הכרובים והחרב מסמלים את שני היסודות, השומרים לאדם את דרך עץ החיים. Says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, I will explain to you in a minute, says Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, there are two components that guide and lead each one of us lead us in our life so we will not lose sight of the path to the tree of life. And what are those two pillars, or two fundamentals? The cherubim and the cherev hamitapechet, and this sword that turns upside down. היסוד האחד, the first principle, הוא החרב המתהפכת. It's that sword. הסבל והצער והזעזועים הגדולים המתרגשים ובאים כגלגל חוזר. He says that the symbolism of the sword is basically reflects on all the afflictions, the tribulations, the challenges, the suffering that we go through in our history. מיד עם סיום תקופת גן עדן החלה היסטוריה רוויית הדמים. He says basically at the conclusion of the era of human beings in the Garden of Eden, when that came to some kind of a close, when it came to some kind of an end, and Adam and Chava were pushed out from Gan Eden, a new era started, and not necessarily a good one. היא פותחת ברצח אח. Immediately after Adam and Chava are being expelled, Chava is pregnant, she gives birth to children, and what do we learn? Cain murdered Hevel, the first murder. סבל לפרט, סבל לכלל, סוללים את הדרך לקראת ההכרה, שרק אם יפנה האדם כלפי מעלה וישתעבד לכל עליון, ימצא חיי נצח עלי אדמות. Which means, the Garden of Eden was in a way, you know what, not in a way, it was the ideal reality that Hashem wanted for us. To live in a place that you can feel God, sense God, walk with God, and continue to develop things and to invent things. After Adam and Chava proved that they cannot live there, and they were expelled, in a way Hashem is teaching us a way back to the Garden of Eden. By putting these two guards on the entrance of Gan Eden, the cherubim and the sword, was not to prevent us from going back, but to prevent us from going back too quickly before we learned our lessons. That's what Rabbi Hirsch here says. This is a very, very meaningful insight. God wants us back in the Garden of Eden, but not prematurely. We need to go through history. We need to go through different experiences. So we will recognize and we will internalize the idea of what are really our values, what do we really need to do in order to be worthy to return back to Gan Eden and not to repeat the same mistakes. So the first lesson is, you see what's happened when you are out of Gan Eden. Murder, the first thing that happens. And you start realizing, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to basically focus on something else. תאוות החושים ויצר הקניין לא יביאו לאדם חיי נצח ואושר. Fulfilling the desire of your senses and the desire to possess things. Kain, kaniti, I possessed ish et Hashem. To think that what will bring you happiness and joy and fulfillment and satisfaction is that if you will buy more land, or you will buy more homes, or you will drive more cars and fancy cars, that's not going to bring you to happiness. The pursuit of happiness is not by being wealthier. תמצית כל הליכות הימים היא הבל, זו משמעות החרב המתהפכת, השומרת לאדם את דרך עץ החיים. The sword is basically, in a way, guides you. Don't go after your desires. Don't go after the power, thinking that that's what will fulfill your life with nachat, with satisfaction. אכן דרך חיים תוכחות מוסר, איסורים סוללים את הדרך לחיים. נמצאת אומר להט החרב המתהפכת היא התוצאה השלילית של ההיסטוריה. Which means basically it says this sword that can change, it's basically what? This is the negative result of history, which means basically this sword that symbolizes power, murder, taking advantage of people. It's basically teaching you it can all what? Reversed. That's what history is all about. You see nations that were strong and mighty, and then they fell. And then you see people who took advantage and tried to abuse people because of their power. That didn't bring them happiness or joy. The cherev is a constant reminder of what you shouldn't do. What about the cherubim? Says Rabbi Hirsch, היסוד השני, the second principle or the second pillar is what? Is the cherubim. עקבות ההתגלות של הקל אל האדם, אצבע האלוקים הרומזת והמאירה, המראה את יד השם בהליכות ההיסטוריה. The cherubim are a reminder of this gentle touch that God touches each one of us. The cherubim reflects the revelation, the manifestation of God in our lives. And not only in our lives, but also in history. So you have the sword and you have the cherubim. The sword reflects the negative. The cherubim reflects the positive, which means the sword is a constant reminder of what we should not do. Look at history. Look what happened to nations and to individuals when they used the sword. And then, the positive reinforcement, the cherubim. Look at these gentle people, gentle structures that basically shows and symbolizes and reflects the hand of God in history and the hand of God in our private lives. הן דרכי ההוראה החיובית של ההנהגה האלוקית המחנכת את האדם. These are the two principles of the divine teaching that guides people. שניהם כאחד, both of them together, החרב והקרובים, הסבל וההתגלות, the suffering, the tribulations and God's revelation, both of them together שומרים על הדרך אל עץ החיים. They are the two tour guides, really. The two principles that guide us to what? Back to the path, to the life, the tree of life. וזו משמעות הפסוק בהקשר הכללי של הפרשה. השם נפרד מן האדם. After Hashem expelled Adam and Eve in a way, he separated himself from them. אך הוא קרא לקרובים ולחרב, לשמור לו את הדרך אל עץ החיים. לשמור is not to guard from, but rather to keep. This is the beauty and the ambiguity, in a way, in Hebrew words. When I say lishmor, so the English translation to be to guard. And to guard means mostly to guard and to prevent you from coming. Rabbi Shimshon Rav says exactly the opposite. Lishmor is to keep, to maintain, like a shomer. I keep it for you. You are not ready yet. After Adam and Chava were expelled, you are not ready to come back to Gan Eden. So now, when I have the cherubim on the ark at the Holy of the Holiest, you know that it's there and it comes out only once a year on Yom Kippur when the Kohen Gadol, when the high priest goes there. And sometimes, according to the Gemara, during the holidays, they will show them the cherubim. It's basically show them what? The revelation of God. It shows them this gentle touch of God in history and in our private lives. I'm here for you. Yeah, I expelled you from Gan Eden. You were not worthy to be there. But I'm keeping it for you. It's yours. But you need to be ready. You need to be worthy. You need to prepare to go back to Gan Eden. Because I, says God, not making the same mistake again. I'm not going to allow you to be there and then to sin. You need to work on yourself. You need to remember the cherev. You need to remember what's happened when you deviate from God, and you need to remember the Cherubim, God's revelation through the history. Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Alter, the author of the Imre Emet, who is the son of the Sfat Emet, the well-known Gerer Rebbe, says the following. Amar Adoni Avizal, he quotes his father, שסוכה היא בבחינת גן עדן. He's going to now talk about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and he's going to talk obviously about the cherubim, that we can derive some lessons. So he says that Sukkot and Sukkah is like Gan Eden. Why? Because Began Eden Ktiv, because it says in Gan Eden, when it talks about the description of the Garden of Eden, Le'ovda u'leshomra. God placed Adam and Eve there, Le'ovda, to labor, to work there, u'leshomra, and to keep and maintain it. Ainu, it means Avoda leshem shamayim bilvad. The Sfat Emet suggests that when Hashem placed Adam and Eve in Gan Eden, he basically gave them a job, but the job was not in order to create some kind of benefits or advantages, but it was Leshem Shamayim, it was for the sake of heaven. V'chen besukot, Chal Shem Shamayim ala Sukkah. And on Sukkot, the name of God basically dwells on the Sukkah. Now, so Sukkot is like the Garden of Eden. Let's remember that. Now, לאחר החטא, after Adam and Eve committed a sin and they transgressed what God told them, נתהוו בית הסתרות. So two elements that create some kind of hastara, which means to cover God's existence, were created. להט החרב המתהפכת והקרובים. The sword was created and the cherubim. So what do we have? We have Gan Eden, which basically symbolize what? God's revelation and manifestation to everyone. After Adam and Chava transgressed God's commandment, God's manifestation and revelation basically got minimized, got covered. How? By the sword and by the cherubim. Okay. וראש השנה הוא כנגד להט החרב המתהפכת, שהדין מתהפך בו לרחמים, כדאית עומד מכיסא הדין ויושב בכיסא רחמים. So he says that Rosh Hashanah, it basically compared to what? To this sword. Why? The sword is mithapechet, which means reversed. It says on Rosh Hashanah, we pray that God will basically change his seat from a chair or a seat of judgment to a seat of mercy and compassion. We ask him to reverse his seat. So Rosh Hashanah is basically accords with what? With the cherev, the sword. What about Yom Kippur? ויום כיפור הוא כנגד השני קרובים, שהכהן הגדול נכנס בו לפני ולפנים. והיית שם שהקרובים עומדים שם שומרים כדוגמת אותם הקרובים העומדים בשערי גן עדן, זכה הכהן נכנס. So on Yom Kippur, the Kohen, the high priest, goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim, into the Holy of the Holiest. And what is there in the Holy of the Holiest? There is the Ark, and on the top of it there are the cherubim. Which means what? The cherubim are on the top of the Ark, the Holy of the Holiest is like the Garden of Eden, and our representative, the high priest, is allowed to go into Gan Eden, into the Garden of Eden. Once a year after preparation, he can go into the Holy of the Holiest, which is Gan Eden, and to see the cherubim, and to see the Kruvim, that are basically keeping for him the path Back to where? To the tree of life. This is why there was such a careful preparation and so many meticulous details for the Kohen prior he would enter the Holy of the Holiest. According to our sources in Yoma, in Tractate of Yoma, 7 days before Yom Kippur, they will take the high priest and they will teach him all the details and halachot and the Jewish law of how to go there, and they will warn him not to change it, not to deviate, just to do exactly what it says in the Torah. Not to deviate, because you are going back to Gan Eden as our representative. So Rosh Hashanah, we hope that we can tilt, that we can change the sword from judgment to mercy. Yom Kippur, we send our representative. Again, we send back human being back to Gan Eden. It's almost like landing a man on the moon. Once a year, we are taking someone from us, who is the high priest, and we, the nation, and our sages, prepare him so he can go into Gan Eden to see the cherubim. And now, after we experience the sword, and we ask that it will reverse to mercy, and after we were successfully sent a messenger, an agent, into the Holy of the Holiest, into seeing the cherubim, הבניין של סוכות מתחיל מראש השנה. That's how we go back, not only to Gan Eden, just to see it, but to fulfill our original mission, לעובדה ולשומרה, to walk the Garden of Eden and to maintain it. And how do we do that? With Sukkot. When we build Sukkot, we start building the Sukkah not physically, but spiritually from ראש השנה. בכסל ליום חגנו. וכתיב בחוכמה יבנה בית, זה ראש השנה. You build the sukkah already on Rosh Hashanah because you take care of the first obstacle / guidance of this cherev. You went through Rosh Hashanah, you reverse it from judgment to mercy. And then what do? You go into Yom Kippur. ובתבונה יתכונן, and it will be established with wisdom, the Yom Kippur. Because on Yom Kippur, one person, the high priest, was able to go in and to come out, not to be expelled, not to be killed, but to come out intact, seeing the Cherubim. And now what do? We all of us, בדעת חדרים ימלאו זה סוכות כדכתיב למען ידעו דורותיכם. We all realized, internalize, understand that we can go back to Gan Eden. And what do we do on Sukkot? We build the sukkah outside. We use natural material. We live in peace with nature. Very similar to what Adam and Chava did before they committed the sin. The cherubim, the Cherubim, is the symbolism. The symbolism of the Cherubim is basically what? It's that Yom Kippur teaches us that our agent, our messenger, was able to see them, and he teaches us that we all can go back now to Gan Eden. And that's Sukkot. And then he continues on and he says, you don't need to wait for Sukkot. Every week we have this opportunity. How? שבת הוא גם כן כך, ששמור וזכור הם כנגד השתי הסתרות. He says we have on Shabbat shamor, to keep, and zachor, to remember. It says this is in accords, or this is basically compared to what? To the cherev and the cherubim. וכתיב בשבת לדעת כי אני השם מקדישכם. Which means on Shabbat we know that Hashem is the one to make us holy. Which means what we see around us are all kinds of hastarot, which means things that cover God's existence. And our job is to remove them. Our job is to look at them and to understand their lessons. The cherev is not, God forbid, to hurt us. It's to remind us what can happen to us when we deviate how the world can go corrupt, how the world can go in such a cruel way when you just use power and you forget God. And the cherubim, they remind us of God's revelation and God's existence in the history and in our lives, and our ability to see it. And after we prove that we can see it, our path to the tree of life is secured. The cherubim on the ark, it's not just an art work. It's much more than that. It's the sign that we are ready to go back to Gan Eden, le'ovda u'leshomra, to do things for the sake of heaven, to enjoy God's presence in our life, and to be worthy to be back in the Garden of Eden. Thank you.